Slick's fault. I blame Matt Slick for this. I blame Matt Slick for this.
Welcome to CARM HARM 4. If you haven't seen this, then you don't know what you're missing. Part 1, I did an analysis of the debate between Matt Slick and Matt Delhoney, but I kind of forgot to do the rest of it. So that should have been this part, but there was nothing more to say. It was all presuppositionalism, and Matt Slick could have and should have done a far better job than he did, but he didn't, so I'm done with that analysis. But this is CARM HARM 4. I need more for this to be an actual playlist. So let's go back to the CARM website, carm.org, and look at what they say under atheism. So if you click secular movements and then you click atheism, this is the first thing that pops up. Now, this is by Robin, yeah, that's the last name I'm not going to pronounce, whatever. Now, this is 5 years old, okay. They've had time to talk to the atheists on the forums that they host on CARM. They've had time to talk to atheists online. Matt Slick has talked to plenty of atheists. I'm sure he's gotten a ton of emails answering his ridiculous questions that he has on this website. Surely Matt Slick and his staff or people that he hires to write for him or however this works absolutely know by now what atheism is and is not. And yet, we still have nothing but dishonesty presented as far as what atheism is. So I'm going to read through an examination of atheism's truth claims here, and every time I come across a logical fallacy or a complaint that I have, I'm going to stop reading it, show you a picture of me, and complain about what's wrong with it, put up a logical fallacy counter, and then go back to reading it. Here we go. An examination of atheism's truth claims by Robin. Atheism is a faith/worldview. That didn't take too long now, did it? So 2 outright lies in the very first, not even sentence. Atheism is not a faith, and it is not a worldview. Now, I know this sort of projection is typical of the apologists, to project all the faults of their own faith onto their opponent. In this case, atheists, because we are anti-faith in a sense. We're anti-religion. We're anti-them. Well, we're not really, but I think that's how they see us. So by painting us with the flaws that they have, they can then strawman us using those problems. Of course, when you know what atheism really is, you can't make this sort of claim. So it's not a faith because it requires no faith to not believe that something is a thing. That is to say, it doesn't take faith to not believe in leprechauns, or goblins, or ogres, or dragons. GODs? Anybody? I guess I said L first for leprechauns, so LGODs? Oh, LOD, I get it, Laud. But of course, it takes faith to not believe in Laud because it's so evident. Okay, so what would we say about a flat earther? They believe that the earth is flat. So does it take faith for them to not believe the earth is a sphere? No, because that's not how it works. Faith is in something, not in an absence of something. I just don't see how that would work. But maybe somebody wants to be very convoluted and picky with language and say, "Oh, well, you can have faith in this absence of things somehow." I don't know. But the first question I would ask would be, is faith good or bad? Because if it's good, then we should have it, and that's fine. And if it's bad, then we shouldn't have it, which means you shouldn't have any faith at all, which would leave you not believing in God. But we're saying the faith that is a bad faith, right? Like blind faith. And so we're trying to paint it that Christians have all this evidence, huge mountains of evidence. They don't. but we're gonna pretend like they do. And then, oh yeah, you see, you see all that evidence, and you ignore it, or you pretend it's not there, or you deny that it's there, and so you have faith in there not being anything. Even though, again, I don't think that you can have faith in that sense. Worldview. What's a worldview? It is, well, a view of the world, but it is a system that informs you about almost, if not every, aspect of life and afterlife or meaning and things of this nature. Atheism does not do that. By being atheist, you do not have any prescriptions. It is a descriptive word. Atheism is not a prescription, it is a description. And the theist absolutely knows this by now. There's no excuse for making this claim. It's akin to saying that being a Republican or a Democrat is a worldview. No, it doesn't tell you everything or many things about life. Buddhism, you could make the argument that Buddhism's a worldview because it comments on many aspects of life, or at least say it's part of a worldview. But you couldn't call not believing in the afterlife, which is a view that some people hold that still believe in God, you couldn't call that a worldview. You couldn't call being a deist a worldview because it doesn't tell you enough about the person involved there. You know that they believe in some sort of God, and that's all you know. Now, when you say Christian, there is a set of rules and ideas and a philosophy that comes with that because it's part of a religion, even though people don't want it to be part of a religion. They say it's a relationship or whatever. But one of the complaints made about atheism is that it doesn't inform you about morality, or it doesn't respond to how to live your life, or it doesn't explain logic or whatever. Well, of course it doesn't, because it's not a worldview. So those complaints cannot be made unless atheism was a worldview, which it isn't. So I wonder if he's going to make those complaints later in this article, but nonetheless, moving on. The Oxford English Dictionary provides the following definition, quote, to believe nothing of a designing principle or mind, nor any cause, measure, or rule of things but chance, ... is to be a perfect atheist. Broken down, no, and theism, God, simply means no God. Although the word itself and its meaning is certainly straightforward, there are a wide range of philosophical complications and issues that must be addressed and clarifications that need to be made where atheism is concerned. As a side additional commentary, none of the things that are ever cited are given sources. So the quote from the Oxford Dictionary, we don't know where it comes from, what page number, no link to any website, no anything to support that definition really came from it. And the ... concerns me because that means there's left out information, which could be resolved if we had the citation for where the bleep this is, but we don't. So that means looking through that dictionary and finding it. Well, which volume? When was it published? That would be nice to know. Oh well, we don't get any of that, so we just have to take his word for it that that's what it says. He gets wrong A being no. A is without. Get it right. And while you were in the dictionary, I'm fairly sure you could have found that. Well, maybe we'd need a translation dictionary, but nonetheless. And from where A is without and theism is God. What language is that using? You could educate your readers by including that knowledge. The problem of atheism as a definition, and for whatever reason he decides to put quotes around atheism now. The first and foremost problem that arises from the word atheist is the type of truth claim being made. And once again, we have another outright lie. That's not a picture of me, whatever. Okay, so again, atheism is not a truth claim. Saying I don't believe in God is not a, well, I guess I'm making a claim that I don't believe in that, so in that sense it's a truth claim, but it's not a claim that there isn't one. Oh, you want the definition that says that the person that says there is no God, end of discussion, period. So that's the atheist that you want to go after, which, I guess there might be one around somewhere, but I've not yet encountered that one, but okay. There is no God is equivalent to there is no goblins, ogres, or dragons. I can make that statement, and I can give an argument to it. I cannot prove that because those sort of negatives cannot be proven. They can only be argued for, which is a problem you're going to have in a little bit here. But there's no truth claim being made, even if I say there's no God, because I'm saying the same sort of thing that I would be saying when I say there are no goblins, there are no ogres, there are no dragons, God, there is none of that. And is that a truth claim? Well, we're going to dig into what he means by that, so let's get back to reading. Dr. Morton Adler describes the difficulty in this manner. Quote, an affirmative existential proposition can be proved, but a negative existential proposition, one that denies the existence of something, cannot be proved. End quote. No citation given. Which I complained about before, but whatever. When a negative existential truth claim is put forward, the one making the claim has shot himself not in the foot, but in the head. Unless the person can be at all places of the entire universe at the same time, he has no way of confirming that whatever he claims does not exist, in fact, does not exist. This is a conundrum the atheist finds him, herself in. Now, whatever Morton Adler has said in his books, which some of them are interesting, I've read How to Think About God, A Guide for the 20th Century Pagan by Morton Adler. It's a good read. I suggest you read it. Is not relevant for whatever your argument is. Your argument has to stand or fail on its own. And cherry picking what he has said to make it seem like he supports your contention is not a good way to formulate an argument. And the argument that you're trying to formulate is, in essence, that no one can ever say that X, whatever that is, does not exist unless they go everywhere in the universe to show that. That's not how things work. When someone says there are no dragons, do they really have to go throughout the universe to show that there's no dragons? Do I really have to go backwards in time to a galaxy far, far away to show that there is no real Darth Vader? How ridiculous this idea is hard to really put into words. We could fill rooms full of books containing things that we couldn't prove. Well, you can't say there's no ghosts because you haven't been everywhere. You can't say there's no giant flying spaghetti monster, which we'll get to in a moment, because you haven't been everywhere. And that's the point. It's a trivial point to make. You can't say that there is no blank. Well, okay, so what? We still do. And when we do, we typically don't require somebody to do the absurd, like traverse the entire universe and all space slash time and every other dimension, because you could always, roll back the goalposts and say, oh, no, 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 you didn't check in the fifth dimension, and you missed that, or you missed it because it just happened and you weren't there when it happened. So it is ridiculous to put that in that level because of the way natural language works. When somebody says there is no Batman, what they probably mean is that Batman only exists as a character of fiction. He isn't a real person that really does stuff. That's what they mean, and we understand that's what they mean. And we don't ask them to prove that that's true, and we don't make the ludicrous statement, aha, you can't prove that, ha ha ha, because we know that they can't prove that. And we understand that that's not how it works. If we really thought maybe there is a Batman, but you say, well, what's the argument that there's no Batman? Or whatever, if we were that ridiculous to do that. But we're not, typically. But God gets a special magical category that's supposed to be elevated above every other category of thing. There's no ice in the freezer. When I look in the freezer, there's no ice in it. That's a non-universal claim. If I said there's no ice in the world, I've made a world claim. If I say there's no ice in the universe, then I've made a universal claim. That last one is not provable. So I need to have some sort of argument for that last one. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary amounts of evidence or a really good argument. At least one that's logically coherent and not this mess. Back to reading. Recognizing their predicament, atheists like Richard Dawkins, because I haven't mentioned Richard Dawkins, so I need to do that, counter such an argument by saying that, well, they can't prove a flying spaghetti monster does not exist. It's highly improbable such a thing actually exists. So the wiser intellectual position is to hold that such a thing does not exist. I don't know if Dawkins really said that. We're just going to have to believe that Dawkins said exactly that. However, this argument commits two errors, so this was going to be good. First, comparing God with a flying spaghetti monster commits the logical error of faulty analogy. Straw man! No, because it isn't being used as an analogy for God, you nitwit. It's being used to say that this thing, like Russell's teapot, is not a thing that you cannot say that there is none of. You cannot say that there is no teapot orbiting the sun. Why? Because it's not a thing that you can say. Right? Right. And you can't say that there is no flying spaghetti monster. Because it's not a thing you can say. Right? Right. Why? Because you already said that you can't say that sort of thing. Now, with the flying teapot, well, maybe you could go and orbit the sun and see where it is. And if you're in all places at all times around the sun, then and only then could you declare that the teapot did not exist, right? Because that's the sort of ludicrous thing that one would have to do using your own illogical idea of how negative universals work. And you couldn't prove that there is not a flying spaghetti monster somewhere in the cosmos. I can, because I have a book that says that a lobster ate it, but you can't. Okay? Because you can't be everywhere in the universe at once. That's what the analogy is about. But, whatever. Continue with your stupid straw man. Second, just because something is improbable does not rule out its existence. For example, all science... Hold on, I gotta stop again. You nitwit! You didn't even read your own thing that Dawkins supposedly had said, which you're straw manning. You can't prove a flying spaghetti monster doesn't exist. Period. Well, you put a comma there. It's highly improbable that a thing like that exists. Period. But you put a comma there. So the wiser intellectual position is to hold that it doesn't exist, or a better way to put it is to be skeptical of its existence. That's what Dawkins said in your quote ish of Doc. It's not even a quote, just something that you're saying that Dawkins said. So I don't even know what the bleep to call that. Can't say it's cherry picked because I don't even know if it is or isn't a thing that he said. But nonetheless, no, he's not saying it doesn't exist. So it doesn't commit the error of saying that it doesn't exist because he didn't do that in the thing that you wrote that he said that he did that he might not have even said. Got it? Okay. For example, all scientists admit that humanity's very existence is enormously improbable. I'll pause in a moment. Scientific scholars acknowledge that it is against all mathematical laws of the universe's cosmic constants and biological mechanisms necessary for life would come to be. Yet they have, and humanity does exist. Let me just read this, just finish it before I pause again. The question is not whether the existence of God is improbable, but rather is there logical, reasonable evidence that moves one towards a conclusion that God exists. That's definitely not a picture of me, that's one of the universe. Whatever, we're gonna just ignore that stupid joke that I made and move on. Half-truth doesn't follow. So the half-truth being all scientists have said this. That's half true. Some scientists have said that. Not all. So, no. And I don't understand why you would then say scientific scholars. Like, what does that even mean? And saying that they admit that humanity's existence is improbable, they might, but so what? And improbable based on what? What odds? If you rewind any event, it will become extraordinarily improbable, and improbability doesn't really necessarily matter in that sense. Who said this? We don't know. It's just every scientist, which we know that's not true. I mean, come on. Stephen Hawking probably hasn't said this. Neil deGrasse Tyson hasn't said this. Dawkins probably hasn't said this. I don't know. I mean, all you need is one scientist that hasn't said that or says something else, and there's your counterexample, and then that whole idea just explodes in on itself. This is a universalistic, worldwide statement. This is a extraordinary statement to make, and you would have to have extraordinary proof to back it up. You'd have to have every scientist listed out and where and when they said the thing that you said that they said to prove that this is true. And you don't, and so it's not a full lie. I can't just say it's an outright lie because I know that there's some scientists that have said this, but it's not true either. And it's not the point. It's not like we're saying that there is not another humanity out there in the universe, which there might be. If another planet was close enough to ours, we would have possibly convergent evolution. That could happen. It's improbable, maybe. I don't know what the probability would be or even how to figure that out. But it's a possibility within the realm of the natural way things work. Now, figuring out all the math on that, that's above me. I'm not going to do that. But we're not saying that. We're saying that we're not even saying that the existence of God is improbable. That maybe you're saying that Dawkins maybe has said that. I mean, this is one huge maybe based on the straw man that you've been constructing. But even if that's what we are saying, then the does not follow part, which is your last sentence, is whether or not God is improbable wouldn't be an issue. Yes, it absolutely would be, because your whole point of the straw man is to complain about that we're saying that it's improbable. So then you would say, well, God is probable. That would be the next thing that follows from that. Not, oh, but there's a logical, reasonable evidence that that leads you to the idea that God exists, which is still not saying that God is probable, by the way, or that God really exists, by the way. It's just saying that there is some sort of logical, reasonable evidence that can be put forth to lead you to that conclusion. But it might be improbable nonetheless. But we're just going to ignore that because it doesn't follow anymore. All right. Hope you enjoy me in part 3 of CARM HARM 4, where I start to read God probably does not exist, and the other things that follow that, and complain about Robin's further logical errors and non-citations. At least I don't have to deal with the weird numbering system like I did in CARM HARM 1 through 3, and those playlists will be in the description, as well as the playlist for this one and all the other things in the description box below. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time. I won't see you. You'll see me. Logic exists. Maybe. Sort of. I don't know. Whatever. As always, pleasant, pleasing Patreons are William McTray, as I can pronounce your name, Robert W. Lester, Joshua Defendi, Hector Schmitz, Jacob Santos. Oh, I screwed it all up again, but special thanks to Forbidden Thinker for his payment to me on PayPal. If you'd like to get your name shouted out once, but then that's it, you can throw me money in PayPal. But if you want to keep your names kept being shouted out, then please be a Patreon so that you pay me Ploxley. And if you don't, then I don't know. You won't hear that, and then whatever.